Welcome to Teaching Out Loud Educator Insights for the Modern Classroom. I'm Kristen Powers, Director of Customer Success at Socrate, and I'm joined with our CEO, co-founder, and current middle school teacher, Maria Anderson. Today we are talking about the soundbites issue. Why does it take 20 minutes to write your name? And this one really struck me, so I have some exciting things I want to dig into, but I want to kind of set the stage for why this conversation, why now. The struggle identified in the newsletter is called the work pacing gap, where students work at very different paces on the same task. And before we get into sort of the why this might be happening and how we might impact that, let's talk about the impacts on you as a teacher, but also on the classroom experience. Like, why does this matter? How does this impact you as a teacher, as your teaching style, and also how the class moves together?
So, uh, the thing that makes this so difficult, like having students work at different paces,
Mhm.
is that at about the same time you have the first student finish an activity, you realize that there are other students in the class who have not even gotten far enough to write their name on the paper yet. There's like nothing. There's nothing done on the assignment. So I'll
Mhm.
just give you an example. We had an iPad activity last week, which you probably know is like my least favorite thing to do.
Right.
And because of all the disasters on iPads. And the activity was watch the video that goes with your presentation and write down 10 things you learned in sentences to turn in,
Okay.
right? So, 30 minutes into the class, I've got students turning it in. And 30 minutes into the class, I got students who still have not found where the video is on the iPad, right? And there's like a very, they've wandered around the room, they've tried talking to people, they checked their email, they wandered into other classes, they just haven't managed to be on track. And I actually think it has to do with a couple things. One of them for sure is executive functioning. Um, Another one is just digital distractions and how easy it is to, in that case, to open a device and fall into whatever the last thing you were doing was, right? And then like 30 minutes later, you're like, why did I even open this? Like, what did I plan to do? But I think that especially for our younger students, our middle schoolers in particular, the executive functioning is tough
Mhm.
for many of them.
When you are trying to make progress and the students are in totally different places, is there something that you're doing to try to manage them to get back into the same place, or are you just having to split your attention and be like, okay, y'all do this, and separating?
Well, they're popcorns all over the room,
Mhm.
right? I mean, so, I mean, clearly I walk around the room and, try to keep them on track. I would monitor the devices if the iPad classroom monitor ever worked, even once.
Oh,
Um,
technology.
yeah, it just doesn't. Um, and, even if they're on task, like even if they have the video, they're like not actually writing anything down, or they just, even if it's a paper assignment, you'll have kids who are done. At the same time, there are kids who have not even written their name. I mean, it's that stark, right? And so I walk around and say, write your name on your paper. Let's try to answer this first question together, And even with that prompting, you'll walk around a second lap and they still won't have their name on their paper, right? So it's like an inability to grasp the time frame and the job requirements, right? Like I am an activity completer. Like I am a writer. I am it's like they can't grasp what the job is. And they
Right.
don't know what it looks like. They don't know what it looks like to be a successful student completing this activity.
I want to come back to the what it looks like and some of that later. One of the things that's really sparked for me is, I've been in ed tech 24 years. I know you've been teaching for 30 years. I've mostly worked as an instructional designer, though. I had a short time in the classroom many, many years ago. And a lot of the work that I would do is around differentiation. And there's different reasons for employing differentiation. But particularly in like middle and high school, you see a lot of that. And that's always a challenge because students are moving at different pace for different reasons. And you've got gifted students mixed in with, students who are struggling with learning challenges. How is this distinct from differentiation, or is it a different type of differentiation? Because this idea of like
It really has,
they're
it
not even
really,
getting started.
yeah, it really has nothing to do with their intellectual ability to do the work.
Hmm.
Sometimes these are kids who are good readers.
Hmm.
They have been following along and they just can't do independent work, right?
Hmm.
And so it's just a different kind of differentiation than we normally do in a class, right?
Right.
And the hardest thing is that if you put a bunch of these kids who have this work pacing gap with each other to differentiate them, you will have to spend 100% of your class time with them. And I'm not sure it's going to go any better, right? Like you'd literally
Right.
have to be like, the answer to number one is, and you'd write it on, I mean, like, I don't know what you'd, but they would all distract each other to the extent that it wouldn't actually go any better, right?
Right.
You hope by mixing them up with students that are better completers, they
Hmm.
can, in my class, they can work with their table team, right? And so often, like the table team, like is sometimes two, sometimes three people. Two people will be like halfway through, and the third person still hasn't written anything down, right? And like they're just kind of wanderers in their headspace, right? We say sometimes jokingly, these are students that don't know how to student.
I get that. I get that. It's definitely interesting because the session that inspired all this, the sound bites for you, was about executive functioning and ADHD, from Sarah Ward, and you've got a link in the sound bites issue to all this content. And she identifies waiting paralysis as one of the reasons students become delayed starters. The inability to even write your name, like you can't even get over that hump, because they struggle with time blindness, executive functioning issues, and this ability to visualize the future. So those were sort of three of the challenges that she identified. And you propose, as you mentioned, that there might be a connection to device addiction and these challenges. So in the Soundbites article, you said, I'm still gathering insights. I'm gonna come back. So that was a few weeks ago. Have you seen anything? Have you seen a connection? What are your thoughts on that?
I'm still gathering insights on this one.
Yeah.
One thing I have done differently, the devices are such a distraction for the kids, especially if they are these ones with the time blindness.
Hmm.
I mean, like I said, the time blindness, it affects us as adults who pull out a
Right.
device, right? So like to expect like a sixth grader or a seventh grader, an eighth grader to manage it, I don't know how that's possible. It would be one thing if like if I could go to a page on my device and then push that page out to all of their devices live so that
Hmm.
like they are all looking at the same thing at the same time, right? Which I think you can do with
Hmm.
Chromebooks to some extent, but you really can't do with iPads, which is one of the reasons why I am not a particular fan.
Hmm.
Um, and so, but I can't do that, right? And so what I did instead was I made like readings for each of the videos. So we'll watch like we learn a lot about things in the real world and there's not really curriculum that goes with it. So we watch a lot of like how does this work videos, right? And rather than having them go back to that video or that transcript on an iPad, I've started creating readings that go with each video. So I run the transcript and the key points concepts I want them to know through, an AI and ask it to create me a reading for the kids. And I literally print that reading. It's like a front back usually. So after we've discussed, we've explored, we've watched the video, I hand them a paper activity and I hand them the reading. And I will say that that goes quite a bit faster than if I give them a device to do it on. Because there's just nothing else to distract,
Right.
right? I mean, they still manage to get distracted. Like if I don't hand them out to the tables and I say, come pick it up, they're still, you know, that takes some kids 10 minutes to finally get over to a table to pick it up. I have them, try all the best practice. One person at your table, go pick this up, get enough copies for your group. inevitably whoever that is at some tables doesn't pick up the reading or only picks up one reading, or they have a really hard time listening to directions and following directions. And again, I just can't blame them for that. They've been put into a culture where everything happens in 10-second bursts and 30-second bursts, and a lot of parenting, not all of it. I love the parents who don't parent this way, but a lot of parenting is, like, I have to work. Here's a device. Go be quiet, right? And that's understandable. Parents do have to work, but I wish it wasn't this way, right? Because it really sets them up to be students who don't know how to student.
Yeah.
But that's been my hack so far that I've really loved is just using AI to create readings instead. And if they've been paying attention in class, they should be able to do the activity without going to look at anything.
Hmm.
But if they need a reference to see how something is spelled, to like reread a description, which would be very natural, they've got a backup that does
Yeah.
not involve a device.
It sounds like one of the tactics is also just making it physical and reducing other potential distractors from
Yeah,
devices.
absolutely. Absolutely.
I think that applies to adults just as much. I mean, I'm thinking
Yeah.
about experiences where I will self-identify ADHD and autism, that I will walk into a room and be like, why did I come in here?
Yeah. Yeah.
What did I come in here to get? And
Yeah.
that's just a part of my brain that like disconnects for a brief moment, and then I'm like, wait, oh right, now I can have the discipline now to like
Yeah.
get back on track. But that's, many years of training around that. And I think there's the other thing you brought up, which is that the device addiction, and thinking about how dopamine affects our cognition and memory, and this idea that if they're playing, these games and they're getting social media quick hits of dopamine, that it changes your relationship to content and ability to consume content that requires longer attention spans, because you're just not getting those quick hits anymore. Do you think that there are ways to replicate that sort of like similar reward mechanisms? I know a lot of people gamify things, right? That's had its own trend.
I mean,
That's
one of
had
the
ways.
gamification that I will sometimes use in class is to put a time box something, right?
Mhm.
So like especially when I have to use iPads, I'll say things like, all right, well, I kind of physical things and time boxing. So for example, I need everybody to go grab their iPads and get back to their seats. I bet we can do that in under
Mhm.
1 minute. Go,
Yeah,
right? Let me time it. Let's
right.
see if we can beat the clock, right? So
Mhm.
like creating a time pressure,
Mhm.
or once we are like
Do
using
you
the
celebrate
iPad,
if you do it and do it? Like, do they go like,
yeah,
oh, go team?
like we try to get like lower and lower times. If I don't do that,
Mhm.
getting iPads and returning to seats is a 10-minute activity because of these ones that are time blind, right? Like they wander and have 12 conversations on the way to get their iPad and wander and have 12 conversations on the way back, right? Um, and so the faster we can do it, the less of that happens, right? The other thing is once they have the iPads, I try to keep them all with me.
Mhm.
And so, one technique, if you have Chromebooks, is you can say tilt the Chromebook down and look, so you can see everybody tilts it down, like not close it, but like tilt it, but it's a little harder on an iPad. So on the iPad, so you can be like, okay, I want everybody to go to this page. You mark it, set, go. They tilt it up and then put it back down, right, when you get there. So you can kind of
Mhm.
monitor the class, right?
Yeah.
Because if you don't keep them all with you as you navigate something as complex as Canvas, you will inevitably be walking around helping 10 of them get there, right?
Mhm.
Even though
Yeah.
you're going to the exact same place you go to every single day you use the system, right? And so for iPads, what I do is have them put their hands on their head.
Hmm.
So, when you get to this page, put a hand on your head, right? Or if you really want to be, put both hands on your head because then they can't be like tab switching and trying to do something else, right? So you can tell who's not with you, get them to be with you. Like, and you can say like, oh, and like inevitably somebody looks up and is like, why does everybody have their hands on their head? I was just playing a game, you know?
Right,
And
right,
then
right.
you can say, like, do you need help? I'm not sure what we're doing. Then the person sitting next to you, can you help them get where we need to be? And like everybody who's got their hands on their head is like, come on, let's get there, right? So they're all willing to help the person who's lost because we move faster then, right? And they're not just stuck with their hands on their head. So, but I don't know what becomes of this generation when they are adults and have to actually work at a computer. I mean, hopefully they grow out of this, right? Hope, but
Have 3,000 tabs open.
I mean, yeah, but it's a real question, like there's never been a generation of kids that was raised with this much addiction to games, devices, social media, 10-second videos, right? Like, do they grow out of it or don't they? Really good question.
To be determined. I don't know if we'll get
To
to an
be
episode on
determined.
that, but I do
We'll
think
see
that
you in a decade. We'll find out. Stay
right.
tuned.
Stay tuned.
See you in February 2nd, 2036.
I really like the sort of framing you said though that like these students get lost and that you're using these physical activities as sort of like mile markers or touchstones of like okay we've reached this point now we're all going to do this thing or we're going to all do this thing and having that as sort of a physicalization of that like we've got a point we're going to stop here everybody do this thing okay we're all on track let's move on that feels like a load on the teacher also to keep breaking down every activity into where are the stopping points where I need to check in, right? Do you actually like have to do that mental load ahead of time, or is that something that you're doing sort of in the moment with the class?
In the moment, really. I mean, it's you have days where you forget that you do these things, right? You have a day where you just stupidly say, okay, go to Canvas, click on the presentation spreadsheet and click on your video.
Mhm.
And then like 10 minutes later, you realize you've created mayhem, and you're like, oh, I should have done it in steps.
Mhm.
Right?
Yeah.
It's just then it becomes a lot of behavior management if you have a day where you're just not careful enough in how you execute an activity. But I think you can't be perfect all the time as a teacher. You can't remember everything every day. And I think that's one of the reasons why we created Socrate is that we know you can't remember everything every day, and you can't even remember when you manage to be on track and like, you can't remember the kids that you had to talk to and the kids that did a great job of helping somebody else that you want to reward and especially those students who are just great all week long. We just released last week, those of you who are So Great users probably saw it on Friday. We just released a feature called Great Behavior Insights. And what it does is tell you on every Friday which kids had great behavior all week, which ones never got warned, which ones, deserve some attention. And this is one of the hardest things to do as a teacher, as a human being, is to not have all your focus be on the ones who are the squeaky wheels,
Hmm.
but instead have your focus be on the students who are delightfully well behaved, help each other, are good partners, like
Hmm.
it's just not in our human nature to pay attention to the ones who are calm.
Yeah.
It's the ones who are causing friction that we pay attention to, right? And they know that. I mean, some of the kids, they just want attention, right?
Hmm.
Which is why they do it. And not all of them, clearly, because some of them have, legitimate conditions that make them that way, right? But unfortunately, it's human nature for us, the teachers, to pay attention to the ones that are creating friction.
Right. I'm excited for this new insights. I think it'll help maybe bring up the whole environment of a classroom by paying more attention to the students that are positively listening all week, and maybe that impacts the students that are struggling. Maybe we'll
Yeah,
start to see some effects in the whole overall classroom dynamic.
yeah. I'm actually gonna pull up, I'm gonna show them this today, like, hey, I've got this new feature that's going to show me who was well behaved all week, and you guys are going to get
Oh,
points in our behavior system every Friday if you're well behaved all week. So don't think I'm not paying attention. I am. It's, definitely something I want to be rewarding, and I just don't always remember, but now I will, right? And
yeah.
in hopes that that will take a couple who are on the edge of good behavior over to the good behavior side, right?
Mm,
And because they'll want their rewards.
that's exciting. I
Yeah,
can't wait to hear how they are impacted by that, or if their behavior changes once they know that
yeah,
that's happening.
yeah.
In the session that was linked, so there's two YouTube videos that you linked from the same presenter. She discusses, I guess, some of the similar content. So I don't know if this was covered in your PD, but it seemed like there were some gaps in what she was explaining, because neurodivergence in learning is one of my special interests. And the things that felt sort of inconsistent, or like, how do we actually address this when we look at a bigger picture of neurodiversity, like the idea of something called alexithymia, where students have difficulty identifying what they're actually feeling and they can't describe the emotions that are going on with them. And she asks you to say, when students are seeming detached or uninterested and don't seem to have vocabulary to describe where they are, what they're doing, could that be an impact of alexithymia? There's research that says between 20 and 44% of ADHDers have alexithymia. And so there might be something more going on there. And so I was wondering if there's something you're doing, because you've been teaching for 30 years, around helping students sort of identify when they're lost and helping them maybe get back on track, what that looks like once they realize it. Is there a process to like bring them back into the fold?
That's a great question. So the video that you watched is different than the training I watched,
Yeah,
right? So
yeah.
she didn't actually go into that in the training I watched. Um, I think it's much easier in older students because they have more metacognitive skills.
Hmm.
I think for middle schoolers and younger, it's very difficult for them to self-recognize what the issue is. And even, yeah, I don't know. I don't know what to do about the middle schoolers and younger. I mean, for high school students, I try to do regular activities where it becomes obvious that to me and to them that they
Hmm.
aren't where they need to be.
Hmm.
So like board work, for example, in math classes and my business classes, like I will often, even in middle school, I do this activity. It's a little harder to follow up on. But where we start class by doing something at the boards.
Hmm.
I'll say, like, tell me what you learned from yesterday, write down 5 things you learned yesterday, or for math class, let's see if we can do a specific problem. And, they'll very quickly realize they don't know anything. For high school students, they'll kind of like self-confess, like, oh, I didn't actually do the homework, or, um, whatever, they start and we have a conversation about it, like, well, how can we get you in better habits? Do you understand now why it's important that you do the practice? Like, um, middle schoolers is just another story because they could have been in class that like I rarely give them homework. So like they were in class the day before, they saw the material, they did the activity, the next day there's nothing in their head, right? And that's just middle schoolers for you, right? And that's that again, that like the things that are important to their little brains
Hmm.
as they go through that time period with the hormones changing and all the social structures, they just aren't, it's not always something their brain wants to remember from day to
Right.
day, right? And so I would say because I teach an elective, especially I try to structure the class in a way that it's not doesn't sink them if they're, got distracted by the latest gossip instead of class, right? But it's certainly more important to those of you who teach, core classes and um, and then, the strategy is just over and over and over going back to older material and making sure
Hmm.
that it really has nothing to do with what you were describing. It's just like to get anything to stick in these heads just requires a lot of repetition, different activities, different things. But
Mhm.
it's especially difficult with middle schoolers because the more you disrupt their normal routine, the harder it is for them to behave.
Yeah. I was actually going to ask that, you've been a teacher so long and you've taught from college to, I don't know, the lowest grade level you've taught, but you have so
Sixth
much
grade is the lowest I've
sixth grade,
taught. Yeah.
so much experience in the classroom that there's the students you're saying have changed, and we've acknowledged that the level of device use is so different and screen activity time. Are there other things that have changed in the classroom experience for you? And if so, like how is So Great helping support that?
I just want to be clear that students aren't the only ones who've changed here.
Yeah, yeah.
I can remember what faculty meetings were like when I was first a professor back in
Mhm.
2002. And we did not have like laptop computers back then. And so like the biggest distraction a professor might have in a faculty meeting was that they were grading some papers while they were listening, right?
Yeah.
Now when you meet with a group of faculty, it's in Zoom. They all have their cameras off and you have like maybe one or two people who's paying attention and everybody else is checked out doing something else, right? That's why their cameras are off for the most part. And you know this because when you ask a question and say, can you put your answer in the chat? It's like crickets, right? And so you know that they're not paying attention. It's not that I'm just guessing,
Yeah, yeah.
I know they're not paying attention. And so it's affected adults as much as kids. I just don't want to be like, I'm picking on kids here. I'm actually
Right, right.
disgusted by the adults who don't pay attention, in meetings, in trainings, things like that. In fact, I have a practice where if I'm going to do a training of some kind, I actually clean my house while I'm watching. Because if I'm doing something physical with my hands, folding clothes, cleaning the kitchen, whatever, I am actually listening and paying attention. If I am at my computer,
Mm-hmm.
there are too many emails coming in, chats coming in, etc. And so like having my computer be physically a little bit separated from me while I'm there is actually the best attention you'll get from me. If I'm out on a walk walking the dogs while we chat, you got my full attention. In a way you don't have it when I'm in front of a computer. And I think that probably applies to kids too, which is why I like to do so many activities that are, involve physical simulations and labs, but also just like now readings on paper and activities on paper because the devices are too distracting for everybody.
That makes sense. I think that was what I was getting at, is that there's more factors at play here that aren't just students, that like the classroom dynamics have changed, the way that adults are teaching and learning has changed, and we are overall just more distractible, and there's more distraction available just in our fingertips, right?
If you just think about like parental attention, like when I was a kid, if you were in a car with your parents, you all had each other's full attention.
Mm,
I mean, somebody's
not
driving, but
anymore.
like now I mean, if there's a partner sitting next to somebody in the car, they're probably on their phone, the kids are on their devices. Like nobody, like we're losing these community spaces where we used to learn how to socially interact.
Mhm.
We're losing them everywhere. We're losing them at home, we're losing them in cars, we're losing them at school. We've made some progress, I think, by banning smartphones and cell phones in schools in many states, or I think 37 states at the last count I saw. I think that's great because there is a place where we are gaining back social practice,
I love
right?
that. And it seems like having some of the data around behaviors and behavior management helps initiate those conversations. And you can reach out to parents and have more engagement with them and create more of that social connection, right?
Yeah.
I love that. Well, we are at time. Please join us next time, which is going to be on the 20th, where we're going to reveal some deep data dives. What 1,000 teacher voices reveal about classrooms in the age of AI. It'll be at 1 p.m. Eastern. And thank you for joining. Thank you, Maria. We hope you have a great day.
Bye, Kristen.
Bye, everybody.